Welcome back, students, to eCoreAcademy. My name is Anita, and today I'm bringing you a new Anatomy and Physiology lesson that was a long time in the waiting, not even the making. I'm really excited to be bringing this lesson to you, as it's been a long time since I made a cardiovascular system video for you guys. Before we get into the topic, please like the video if you find it beneficial and others like it beneficial, and also subscribe to our channel to encourage us to make more content like this for you guys. We already love making this content, but we need a little bit of motivation from our student community to know we're going along the right path. AJ and I are trying a lot of new stuff, so please also drop comments about whether you like them, you don't like them, and so forth. So let's get right into what I have planned for us today. So we're going to be doing a lesson on the heart anatomy. This is going to be part 1. There's going to be a video following up, part 2. So the reason I've split it up is because part 1 focuses more about the location of the heart in the body and the relationship of the heart relative to other organs in the body. So we're going to be talking about the heart's external relationships and functions in the body before actually dissecting it and looking at it internally and what it looks like on the inside of its chambers, with its atria, with its ventricles, and with all the different great vessels that connect to it. So this first lesson is going to be talking about the outside. So let's talk about the location and situation of the heart relative to other organs in the body. So location and situation are going to be the main idea of this lesson. So keep those two factors in mind, and let's get right into the material for today. So first section is going to be on the heart. Let's do a summary of what the organ actually does so that we can clear up any misconceptions and actually review what I told you guys about the heart in the cardiovascular overview video. So we're going to be answering the question, what is the heart? Keep this question in mind as I go through these notes and I give you this explanation. What is the heart? What does this organ in our body do? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How much does it weigh? All those kinds of questions should be in your mind as I go through these notes. So the most mundane answer about the structure of the heart would be that it is a hollow muscular organ. So let's break this definition down into 2 parts. Let's first look at hollow. When you think of hollow, you might think of a guitar. A guitar has a hole right underneath the strings and bridge, and inside that hole is a really open space inside of the guitar. That's how you get the vibrations and the noise from the instrument. Or think of an auditorium. If you're sitting and listening to someone do a presentation in a gigantic auditorium, or you're watching a concert or something, that auditorium is a gigantic hollow space. So hollow means open. There's nothing in it. There's just open air and space. So that's what the heart is. The heart is just not this chunk of muscle. It's not this chunk of meat. There are open spaces inside the heart. We call these spaces cavities, or you can call them chambers of the heart. If you look at this heart diagram, it just shows the external part of the heart, but internally, we have 4 main cavities. We have 4 chambers. They're open because you need open spaces in the heart for blood to actually flow. How can blood flow through a thick slab of muscle or of cells? It can't. You need to have open spaces inside of the heart so the blood can flow. So that's why it's a hollow organ. It's also a muscular organ. So think of an engine. The heart is like the engine of your body. It is pumping blood, it's contracting, pumping blood, squeezing itself so that it can push blood all throughout your body, to your lungs and to the rest of your body. That is why it's muscular. If you think of the muscles are very strong. They move, they contract, they squeeze to help with your motor. So this is like the motor in your body. Another way to think of it would be like thinking of pumping up your bicycle's tires. So if you have a pump, you're going to pump up your tires before you go on a ride. What does the pump do? Well, it puts air into deflated tires. Similarly, the heart does that for the body, but instead of air, it's blood. It's squeezing blood throughout the body, and the blood goes all the way to the ends of your fingers, to the ends of your toes, all throughout your body to supply nutrients and other oxygen to cells that need it, and also collect their waste, as in carbon dioxide and so forth. So that is what the heart is regarding its structure. So like I said, the heart pumps blood through the circulatory system. The circulatory system are all these vessels in your body, as in your arteries, your veins, your arterioles, your venules, your capillary beds, and so forth. And the circulatory system includes your pulmonary flow, which is to your lungs, and your systemic flow, which is to the rest of your body. So if you're thinking about the size of the heart and what it would look like in relation to regular things that we know about, think of the size of your fist. So this is the size of my fist. So if you raise your fist up, your heart is approximately the size of your fist. Our hands are relative to the size of our bodies. Like, I am a smaller person, so I have smaller hands. A larger person like AJ has larger hands. Therefore, your heart is definitely relative to the rest of your body. So that's a good approximation of the size of your heart. For a smaller person, you might be amazed by how small your heart is. Well, even though it's that small, it is a very powerful muscular organ. It also weighs between 7 to 15 ounces. This is about 200 to 450 grams. Again, this is the average human heart. Obviously, there's a scale for this, but this is what an average person's heart would be, how much it would weigh. So those are some facts on the heart. Again, the question we considered on this slide was, what is the heart? That was the question we constantly came back to. What is the heart? And if you want, please copy down these notes. Hopefully, I elaborated on those enough for you guys, and I used examples from everyday life. So next, let's talk about the location. This is going to be a pretty interesting part. I'm super excited. So where in the body is the heart? There are a lot of misconceptions about this. If you're from America, when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, we put our right hand on the left side of our body in salute to the flag, because we say this is where our heart is. We're putting our hand on our heart. But this is kind of a misconception, and we'll see why. So we're going to be answering the question, where exactly in the body is the heart? So let's look at the location part 1. Before I even get to the notes written on the slide, I want to give you some background information on where the heart is in the body. If you guys are taking notes, you can definitely listen to me and take notes on this. This is a lot of valuable information. So the heart is located in the mediastinum. Again, the heart is located in the mediastinum. The mediastinum is pretty much the middle part of your chest cavity. So your chest cavity is pretty much, if you think about your chest as in your rib cage, it's pretty much that area of your body. So in it, in the very center, in the mediastinum, lies your heart. So if you look at this diagram over here, right here where my cursor is, right underneath the rib cage, where you see kind of these lines right here, that's where your heart would be nestled in your mediastinum. The mediastinum pretty much just follows the outline of your heart. So if you think about your heart, the mediastinum just outlines it. Along with the heart, there are other viscera in the mediastinum. So you might be wondering, what are viscera? Viscera are other important organs in major cavities of the body. So these viscera include your lymph nodes, your thymus, your phrenic nerves, your cardiac nerves. Also, they include your esophagus and your trachea. So if you think about those all lie in your mediastinum area, and those should all ring a bell. Those are all very, very important organs in the body. Surrounding your heart are your lungs, your left lung and your right lung. Your heart is nestled right between them. So if you think of your left lung and your right lung as butterflies, your heart is pretty much the body of the butterfly. So the left lung and the right lung would be like wings, and your heart would be like the body of the butterfly. And also, there are other really important organs, larger organs, that fill up that cavity in your chest. They include great vessels. These great vessels are your main veins and your main artery. What do I mean by this? Well, you have a lot of veins and arteries in your body, but if you think about it, all those veins that bring deoxygenated blood to your heart, they all join into two major veins that both come into your right atrium. So those two major veins, your great vessels, are your inferior vena cava and your superior vena cava. We're going to be getting them into more detail we're going to be getting into more detail with them in the next video, but let me just tell you what they are. So your superior vena cava comes from the top. So if this was your lung, your superior vena cava comes from the top and empties into your right atrium, bringing deoxygenated blood from your arms, your neck, your head. So the top part of your body, everything above your heart. Your inferior vena cava comes from the bottom of your heart and empties into the right atrium as well, bringing deoxygenated blood from your stomach area, your abdomen, your legs, areas like that, everything below the heart. Those are the two great vessels of veins. There's also a great vessel that is an artery, and this is the aorta. When we look at diagrams of the heart, I'm just going to go back 2 slides. If we think of diagrams of the heart, this enormous branching structure right here, you're going to be able to pick out the atria on every diagram that you look at. It is right next to the pulmonary trunk. the aorta, it branches off into multiple arteries, and it takes all that rich oxygenated blood from your left ventricle and pumps it through the systemic flow throughout your body. So those are the great vessels, the main great vessels that take up that space. Another thing I want to cover with you are where the heart is located relative to the bones in your body, so the skeletal system. Well, the heart is located, if you think about your vertebrae column, which is your spine, your backbone, your heart is located between T5 and T8. So you might be thinking, Anita, what do you mean by this? So if you think about your vertebrae column, if this is your vertebrae column, you have individual vertebrae that make up your vertebrae column because they're connected to each other. These are labeled T1, T2, T3, T4, and so on. Your heart is located between your fifth vertebrae and your eighth vertebrae, which is T5 to T8. As for your ribs, which is the front, which is in front of the heart, your heart is located between the second rib and the sixth rib. So that is where your heart is located relative to the bones in your body. And lastly, I want to talk about the heart itself. So like I was telling you, if you're American, you know what I mean by when we do Pledge of Allegiance, we put our right hand on the left side of our chest because that's where they always tell us where our heart is. Well, that's not necessarily true. The heart is right in the center of your chest. So if you come over here to this diagram, your heart would be right underneath this long bone right here. Your heart would be right in the middle there. It's not offset to the left over here. It's right in the middle. However, there's a small part of it that is kind of offset to the left. So the entire heart is not located to the left. If you split it symmetrically, there'd be some more mass of the heart on the left side. That's what it means by offset. It's not directly symmetrically divided by that center line. There's a little bit more on the left side. In addition, the apex of the heart touches the diaphragm. So if you think about the heart, it would be a structure looking somewhat like this. And the apex of it, which is like the bottommost part of it, touches your diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscular structure right here where my cursor is at the bottom of your rib cage. It pretty much separates your stomach area, your abdomen area from your thorax area. If you're a runner or a swimmer, you'll know what I mean because a lot of our coaches tell us to use our diaphragm to help us when we're doing intense aerobic activity. So that is what the apex of the heart, which is the bottommost tip of the heart, touches the diaphragm area. And lastly, the heart is located in an oblique position. What do I mean by this? So the heart is not positioned exactly. If you took the heart out and you're trying to position it comfortably, it's not positioned like exactly so that the apex of the heart. If this was the heart, it's not positioned so that it's exactly like this. It's positioned a little bit slightly so the apex kind of tilts downward. That's what oblique position means. So let's get into what I've written on the slide very quickly. We're going to be looking at some vocabulary regarding position. I'm mainly using this slide to introduce you to some medical terminology that you might see regarding position of organs and bones and so forth in your body. And we'll be talking about the structures around the heart and how the heart is located relative to that structure. So the heart is located in the superior surface of the diaphragm. Again, the diaphragm is that muscular partition right here where my cursor is. So if you think about superior, think about the actual word that we're common with, superior. So think of a king and a peasant in a feudal system. The king is superior to the peasant, which means the king is above the peasant. The king is above the peasant. That's what I mean. So it's pretty much the same thing regarding position. Superior means higher in position. So if this was the diaphragm, using this vocab word that we know, the heart would be higher in position, which is above it, which means the heart would be right where my cursor is. It's left of middle, which I was saying a little bit more of its mass is located to the left of your offset to the left of your breastbone. So that is left of middle. Middle is just pretty much that symmetrical line that divides your body in half running along your breastbone. It's anterior of the vertebrae column. So the vertebrae column is your backbone as in your spine. So anterior means it's nearer to the front or top. So that means it's in front of your vertebrae column. So if this was your vertebrae column, well, is your heart in front of it or behind it? Well, if we think about anatomy, your heart is in front of your vertebrae column. If you're looking at a side profile of a human, your heart rests in front of your vertebrae column. That's what this part means. And lastly, it's posterior to the sternum. So the sternum is also known as your breastbone. It's where your thymus, that fatty piece of tissue, is. It's right where my cursor is right now. That is your sternum. It pretty much is the symmetrical line that you would follow. That's your middle that kind of divides your body into symmetrical halves. So it's posterior to the sternum. So what does posterior mean? It means further back in position, which means the heart is behind your breastbone. Let's look at the second part. It's situated in the middle of the thorax. So the thorax, your stomach area would be like your abdomen, and then your thorax would be the upper part of your upper body, as in your pectorals and that area. So it's in the very middle. It's in the mediastinum. The largest part of the heart is offset, like I told you, it's offset to the left. There's a little bit more of the heart located on the left. So offset means the distance that is off the line. What I mean by off the line is the midline. So where your breastbone is. If you're thinking about a symmetrical line that divides your body in half, a little bit more of your heart is to the left. And it's left underneath the sternum. So it's underneath the sternum means it's behind the sternum, and then a little bit more of it's located to the left, and it's surrounded by the lungs. So your left lung and your right lung, like I told you before, it's nestled between your lungs. So let's look at the second part of the position. Let's look at the second part of the location. So let's look at some structures which surround the heart that you should know about. So all those structures I talked about, we're going to be going through each of them really quickly. So your diaphragm, it's a muscular partition between the thorax and the abdomen. The thorax is your upper body, and then the abdomen is your lower upper body. So it's like your stomach area and then your pectoral area. And the diaphragm splits it in half, and it's a muscular partition. It's where the apex of the heart lies. The midline divides the body into symmetrical halves. So if you follow the line right between your head to your breastbone / your sternum, that is the midline. If you think of maybe a circle, if you're in geometry and you're trying to fold a circle in half, you're folding into two equal parts. You're folding it symmetrically along the midline. So that's what the midline is. The vertebrae column is your spine or backbone, like I said. The sternum is the breastbone. The breastbone is right here again. For those of you who missed it the first time, my cursor is surrounding it right now. And lastly, the thorax is that entire section between your neck and your abdomen, as in your rib. It's like your rib cage area. If you think about your rib cage, that whole area is your sternum. I'm sorry, your thorax. Now let's look at some functions. So let's do a review of the heart's purpose and why it's so essential in the body. So we're going to be looking at some functions, and it's going to be kind of a review of what I did in the cardiovascular overview video with all of you. So let's look at some functions on the left-hand side and then quantities on the right-hand side. So here are some functions. It pumps blood throughout the body. It does this, the heart pumps blood throughout the body using contractions. If you guys think about the heartbeats that you hear, that lupped up sound, that's contractions. The heart is squeezing and pumping blood into the lungs and throughout the body. And it does this using blood vessels. Blood vessels are your arteries, your veins, your arterioles, your venules, and your capillary beds. It's done in rhythmic contractions. So lupped up, lupped up, lupped up. There's a rhythm it follows, and that is the closing of valves in your heart. Again, we'll get more into that later on, but that's where that rhythmic contraction comes from. And just a fun fact, it beats 100,000 times daily. If you look at this picture right here, these thick red structures are your arteries, and then these darker structures, almost bluish structures, are your venules. These bluish structures get their tint because of the deoxygenated blood, whereas these red structures get their redness from the rich oxygenated blood. Here, if we look at some quantities, the average human heart beats at 72 BPM. So that's beats per minute. So every minute, your heart is beating 72 times on average. Your heart in one lifetime of 66 years. So let's say you're living up to 66 years and we count every single heartbeat your heart ever makes. We're going to have approximately 2.5 billion heartbeats. And that's a pretty cool number, in my opinion. So let's look at some locations and functions of basic and unspecified parts of the heart. So these are kind of those awkward parts of the heart that we still need to go over, but they don't really fit into any category as in any particular lesson. I just want to go over them with you guys right now. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is the pericardium. So there's some things that I want to cover on the pericardium with you all. So the pericardium is the sac that encloses the heart. If we think of a sac, think of if you're buying rice from a store and you empty the rice out of the container. It's a cloth bag. It's a sack. You can do sack bag races. That is a sack. So if you think of the heart and you're covering in that rice bag sack, that is pretty much what the pericardium is. If we look at this picture right here, this whitish tint right here, that is the pericardium. It's a sac that encloses the heart. So what is the pericardium? What is its use? So it's protection for the heart, which means even though the heart is in that mediastinum area, it protects it from any kind of damage that could be done if you know how the heart beats very rapidly. If it hits other organs or anything like that, it just protects it from any kind of damage, if there's some kind of bacteria in your body. The pericardium pretty much just protects your heart. It also provides lubricant. So your heart is a muscle. It's pumping constantly. Well, if you think of an engine and it's just pumping constantly, you need to put oil so that your engine it's lubricated, so that it can actually work, so that the parts can move together and they don't make that grinding noise. They move together smoothly and they work together smoothly. Well, the pericardium also provides pericardial fluid, which pretty much lubricates the muscles of the heart, so they can just keep pumping, gives them that lubricant so that the muscles actually mesh together and that they don't get dry and lose their moisture and lose that function to be able to pump like a muscle. So now let's talk about the two parts of the pericardium. There is the viscerous pericardium. It is the inner layer. So there's two parts. The inner layer is the viscerous pericardium. I'm not going to be getting into too much detail, but just so you know, it's in contact with the pericardial fluid. It's literally touching the heart. So it regulates that pericardial fluid that the heart needs. It also contains mesothelial cells. We're going to be going over the heart wall later on, but just so you know, the mesothelial layer of the heart wall is just that one cell deep layer, that very innermost layer of your organ that comes directly in contact with whatever is inside of that organ. So in this case, the heart has blood inside of it. So the mesothelial layer is just that very thin innermost layer that comes in contact with the blood. It lines the inner cavities and things like that. The second part of the pericardium, the outer part, is known as the fibrous pericardium. Like I said, this is the outer part of the pericardium. It's made of thick, dense connective tissue. This would be more of your protection part. It protects your heart against any kind of wear and tear that would happen from external factors. So now that the pericardium is out of the way, let's look at these two other vocabulary I have. The pulmonary circuit pump. So what is pulmonary? Pulmonary is pertaining to your lungs. So it is when blood is pumped through the lungs where CO2, which is carbon dioxide, and O2, oxygen, is picked up. So CO2 is dropped off and O2 is picked up. So what happens is the blood from your body will enter your heart through your inferior and superior vena cava. It will enter into the right atrium. It will go through a valve into the right ventricle. The right ventricle will pump that blood through the pulmonary trunk and into the lungs. The lungs then, in the lungs, your actual red blood cells will drop off the carbon dioxide they've collected from around the body, and your lungs will supply them with oxygen. Then your blood will return to your heart into your left atrium, and then your blood will go through a valve into your left ventricle, and your left ventricle will pump that blood through your aorta, and then it'll go into the systemic circuit pump. So blood is pumped through tissues, delivering O2 and other nutrients while collecting CO2 and waste. So your left ventricle pumps blood into your aorta, and your aorta delivers all that oxygenated blood through arteries in your body. And while this is happening, your blood is releasing that O2 and collecting that CO2, and it'll return through veins to your heart to get reoxygenated through the lungs. So your pulmonary circuit pump, as in the two chambers of the four chambers in your heart that send blood to the lungs, are on the right side of your heart. So your right atrium and your right ventricle. The two chambers of your heart that send blood throughout the body, as in not to the heart, focused on the body, they are on the left side of your heart. They're the left atrium and left ventricle. So that stuff we'll get more into detail in the next video, but just so you know about the location and situation of the heart, these are 5 of the sources I used. This is my works cited. I'll have all of this linked in the description box below. So if you want to watch these videos as well, please go ahead and do so. I give a lot of credit to these videos because they helped me develop this lesson, but I developed this lesson mainly on my own. So these notes are great. I think you guys should definitely copy them down and use them. Okay, guys, that's all I have planned for you today. I'm really happy I was able to do this lesson on heart anatomy part 1. I'm so happy to get back to anatomy and physiology with you all, and please be expecting more cardiovascular videos in these days to come. Before you guys click out of this video, please like, the video and subscribe to our channel if you think these videos are beneficial and want us to keep making them. We love to make them, but like I told you before, we need some motivation and we need to know that the student community backs us and likes these videos. Please also look into our website. It's going to be going up very soon. I know I keep saying that, but we want to make it as nice and resourceful and geared with all these cool functionalities for our students as possible before we actually release it to the public. We also have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please use those to share our videos if that's easier for you to do, to share them with friends and family. Please look into those. I put posts daily of videos that are going up, and you'll be notified of them so you can immediately go to YouTube and watch the latest video that just came up. And lastly, if you have any personal or business correspondences, please email us using our Gmail. All these things will be also located in the description box below, so don't worry if you can't catch them now. All right, guys, that's all I have planned for you today. Have a wonderful day, and I'll be getting back to you with more A&P videos soon. Bye!